Hello again. It's been a week since we started the series, the Leadership Coronicle, and we're back again for chapter 2. Thank you so much for being here again today. Last week we started this series of webinars with the first chapter under the name of the role of fear and survival circuitries, the neuroscience of fear and anxiety, and the impact of that on individuals and teams. And this week we're going to go more in depth into the impact of what is happening around us on our personalities as leaders and the teams we manage. So thank you again for being here. Before I start, I'd like to thank my team. Dawn is going to be chatting, helping you on the chat window and forwarding your messages to me. And Sharbil is directing this live webinar. We're set. It's been a good start. First time I do live webinars like this. A lot. We've learned a lot last week. We've confirmed sound works well this time, and we've got an amazing guest speaker with us today. I can see there's some of you started joining, so you're welcome. Don't forget to post your questions in the live chat window if there's any urgent question. Otherwise, we can take all your questions during the Q&A session. Subscribe, please, on the YouTube channel and put remind me and subscribe. This way we can follow up with you and remind you of next week's webinar, and also through the LinkedIn channel or the webinars.leadership.com, where you can add your email and then we will be sending you notifications. Let's start, please, by you again telling us from where you're joining us, country, your name, and maybe what you do. The reason why we launched this series of webinars is because of these pressing questions that leaders have at the moment related to how to manage this crisis and what's going to happen after the crisis. If you happen to be worrying about your own future, your own position as a leader, or the position of your business, if you find yourself in a place where you're not able to think ahead or lost trust in the market, in your structure as an organization to adapt to the circumstances, if you're finding it difficult to answer these really difficult questions right now that you're asked, and wondering whether your thinking was adaptable enough or your business structure was adaptable enough, that's the reason why we're launching these 6 chapters of the Chronicle 1, where we will be addressing these questions through science, but also through industry by having some guest speakers from the industry with us, having you as well as participants, sharing all these ideas together and coming up with a model that can work. The 6 chapters, just as a recap, we finished chapter 1, the neuroscience of fear, anxiety, and stress last week. Today we will talk about the business post-traumatic syndrome. Is your business showing signs of post-traumatic stress disorder? Next week we'll talk about what kind of leadership skills do we want to build today to secure the future. In chapter 4 we will talk about a bucket list, an action plan that we need to put together based on what we've learned through this phase. Chapter 5, how to create scenarios, how to build organizational immunity by building simulated scenarios that can help us get ready and build the organizational immunity. And in chapter 6, we will talk about how can we integrate all of these in your strategy. So starting with chapter 1, last week, we just as a recap for those who were not with us or didn't get the chance to watch the rerun. In chapter 1, we spoke about the role of the amygdala in acting as a warning system in the brain by scanning the environment for potential danger and relaying the information to the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus then is going to release hormones and neurotransmitters that will engage the body in a stress-related response, what we call the survival circuitries. And what we emphasized a lot last week is how every time we are in this threat situation, the cortex part of our brain shuts down, and the impact of that on people we work with right now, people who are in this survival mode at the moment. The one message that I wanted to leave you with last week was how important it is to have empathy and compassion at this stage, and to manage feelings and tasks at the same time. Something that is really difficult for us to do at the moment, now that we're stressed, now that we are required to do the undone, but at the same time be able to manage emotions and feelings of people we work with. That was the one message I really wanted to leave you with last week, to remember to call people, check how they're doing, and show compassion. This week we start another chapter that relates more to the business, but as usual we'll start talking about a scientific concept and apply that scientific concept to business. With us on the other line on Skype is Sarah-Jayne Clark from London. Sarah is a trauma therapist with the NHS in London. She will be talking to us about what trauma is and what is a post-traumatic stress disorder. So I'm going to move to Sarah's screen and start talking to her. Let's hope that IT helps get everything up and running. Let me move to... Yes, Sarah, just a moment. It's making sure that they can hear you on YouTube. It doesn't seem they can hear you on YouTube. Just checking. All right, let's start the interview and I will explain to the audience what you're saying. I think they're hearing me, but they can't hear you. Another new IT issue that we need to work on. So Sarah, thank you for being with us today. You are a trauma therapist with the NHS in London, and we'd like to talk to you, ask you about what trauma is in your own words. And if you allow me, just after you finish, to say what you said to the audience.
Okay. The trauma is when a person or people through a distressing event, and this causes an overwhelming amount of anxiety and stress that can have an impact on how the person or society manage situations.
Okay.
We can think about trauma as being more of a personal trauma. So, for example, the death of a loved one, or on a larger scale, so at a societal level, such as COVID-19, what's happening now?
Thank you. Let me repeat that. So you're saying that the trauma is the situation of the brain as the result of a distressing event, an overwhelming amount of stress that exceeds one's ability to cope or integrate his emotions or her emotions in that experience. And then you said that trauma can result from either a single, a recurring, or an extended event.
A prolonged series of events,
Okay.
yes.
Anything else we need to know about trauma?
No, I guess this has happened before. If we think about some of the pandemics and epidemics that have happened, around the world before, we can think about the Black Death and the Spanish flu, which also had a massive impact on people's mental health. The people who were hospitalised survived, mental health really deteriorated.
Okay, thank you. Do you think that we are going through trauma at the moment? Would this corona crisis be considered as traumatic?
I would say yes. The coronavirus would be considered as traumatic because, as I've said, that there are more personal traumatic events happening, like the death of people, loved ones, but also if we think about people and organisations and what's happening my colleagues and chest workers and even in other industries, quite a big impact on people. And just also thinking about when it comes to people returning back to work, how will that be managed? And how will that be managed? I'm already hearing how stressed and anxious people are actually returning back to work, worried about how they might cope.
Okay,
Interesting.
Thank you. Let me repeat that. So you're confirming that we're going through a traumatic experience at the moment, and we know this from the way people are behaving, the stress they are experiencing through this extended series of events. And if I may add, there's different levels of threat at the moment. There's the threat from the environment itself, what is happening in the environment through the virus, but also some of us have experienced a deeper level of threat if they were infected or lost someone to the virus. So people are affected by this crisis at different levels. Does trauma affect people equally?
Well, if we think about post-traumatic stress disorder, this can be about an individual on a society level. And what happens is that the person or the society relives the past traumatic in the here and now, and this could be through flashbacks or nightmares. And they may experience an increase in anxiety and emotional arousal, things that they see or hear, or beliefs that they start to develop. They might become more hypervigilant, feel low in mood. But not everybody will develop PTSD. There are differences between people. And I guess what happens is that people start to develop protective attributes that developed in the brain in order to be able to cope with this situation.
Do you mind if I summarize just in case they're not hearing you? So you're saying that people are affected differently by any trauma, and they would react and cope differently with a traumatic experience. And then you're relating this to the post-traumatic stress disorder, where individuals build these protective factors, what is called protective factors, which are attributes, skills, conditions that are developed to cope after a traumatic experience. How do you think this is going to affect people and businesses from now on?
Well, I think, as we've said, people will manage in different ways. So businesses, leaders, organisations are really going to need to be looking out for some of the symptoms that might occur within their teams, within their employees. You know, and there's going to be a mix. Some of the things that I've already said, but also, you know, people within this time and when they go back to work. There may be, you know, skills that they've developed that could be quite useful as well. So people have been spending more time with family members, so there might have been an emphasis on learning to share, delayed gratification, so putting on hold immediate rewards, learning new skills and hobbies like painting. And for example, if I think about painting, if you paint pictures of people hugging and being together, this releases the hormone oxytocin, and that's the hormone that plays a role in social interaction and bonding. So even though it's not always possible to physically be with other people, even imagining that you are can make you feel happier. So I think all these things are going to be important for organisations to be looking out for. And the other thing is that people will behave differently in groups, in teams. If we think about Bion, for example, who was a British psychoanalyst, and he thinks about, you know, the task of the group. So within teams, there will be a task that people need to achieve, you know, need to reach. But sometimes, because of all this stuff that's been going on, and generally in groups anyway, something else happens. People can tend to be a little bit defensive. So he talks about the basic assumptions of fight and flight, pairing and dependency within a group. So these are some of the other things that might need to be thought about.
Okay, very interesting. And luckily, I think the audience was able to hear you directly this time. So no need for me to translate. Interesting. So it actually makes a lot of sense if people lived a stressful experience and they're back to work, they are going to bring a little bit of that stress with them to the workplace. And it makes it a big challenge for leadership at the moment to deal with these emotions, deal with people's differences in coping with these new emotions they have after this trauma. This wouldn't be a technical word, but it's just a word that we've invented in this series called the business post-traumatic syndrome. Do you think that that term is appropriate?
I do, and something else that also comes to mind is the idea that Winnicott had. So he talks about, you know, this may be linked to your idea as well. He talks about the good enough mother. So if we think about the organisation as representing the mother or the organisation needs to be able to hold emotionally and psychologically the child or the team within that organisation and help them through this difficult transition in order to feel safe again and then eventually reach independence.
Interesting. Well, this opens the door for the next discussion on how to deal with the business post-traumatic syndrome. I thank you very much, Sarah, for being with us. Very valuable information on trauma and post-traumatic stress disorder. I hope you keep safe, and I hope we finish this with this soon. It looks positive, it seems. We might be back to work sometime soon, apparently. So have a great day, and hope to see you again soon on our series.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
That was interesting. A definition of what trauma is and what PTSD is. So Sarah's confirmed that what we're going through right now is to be considered as a traumatic experience, and that it will lead to a different change in behaviors in people we lead. This is why I would like to talk about the impact of this trauma on businesses. Our challenge today is not only the coronavirus. We're safe as long as we're home, we're not in contact with other people. But what's coming, what this crisis is building in terms of impact on our personalities is, let me actually change to the presentation. Perfect. The impact on our personalities and the leadership challenges it brings. Our bigger challenge is after Corona, is the transition from post-Corona to after Corona. How has this affected our long-term strategic thinking? Are we able to think long-term? Do we still have confidence in our ability to make decisions, especially when it comes to investment decisions? And what happened to the new team dynamics? A lot of skills have emerged right now. A lot of resilience have emerged, but also a lot of withdrawal emerged. How are we going? How is this leaving an impact on the organization? And how are we, from a leadership point of view, going to cope with it and manage it? How do you know that your organization is experiencing symptoms of BPTS? Different factors, and I will give you the chance to actually share your own experience in your own organizations. But the post-traumatic syndrome is the signs for it, the symptoms are when we start experiencing negative thoughts and feelings. Thoughts like, I'm not good, I don't think I can do it, I don't trust you, I don't trust the environment, these negative feelings that things are not going to go well. While I'm talking, if you would like to share your own thoughts on these, please share them in the chat window. Also, a distorted belief of yourself, of your abilities. It happens a lot when we are put in stressful situations, or where we are in situations that we can't control and lose this power of managing. It might affect the way we look at ourselves. An ongoing fear or anger. It's normal that we're stressed right now. It's normal that we are a bit angry. The business is not necessarily performing very well. We have our own personal and team challenges that we need to deal with on a daily basis. This might lead to some feelings of stress and anger. Another symptom is a deep sense of guilt, especially if we have been in situations where we had to let go of team members. This deep feeling of guilt that we might experience, or the feeling of shame, and I've had the chance this week to speak to different business owners, different team leaders, and most of them confirm that the feeling they're having right now is a bit of shame for not being as successful as they used to be, for not looking as successful as they used to be, as they used to look in front of their teams. Are you experiencing any of those feelings? So I'm going to ask you a few questions right now, and please share your own experience, if you like, with us. So question 1 is, what are the signs that your business is going through trauma? It would be helpful to share this feedback together. I'm going to be reading your answers before I move to the next question. What are the signs that your business is going through trauma? Another question, what are the signs that leadership in your business is going through trauma? We had a couple of feedback last time in the chat window saying that my leaders the managers of my company are showing signs of withdrawal. They're communicating less and they're sharing less information. Also, Aline said, guilt among employees for perhaps having to let some team members. Absolutely. This is confirming one of the feelings that might happen as a result of a traumatic experience. Kunsheria is saying delay in payments by clients, definitely affecting the flow of the business, might lead to your own business, delaying your payments to your suppliers. Most businesses around the world are in this really difficult situation. Levon is saying lack of trust in the management, financial chaos. Can you tell us more, Levon, about the lack of trust in management? Can you provide an example, a real example that is happening right now in your organization? Feelings of anxiety by some team members for not being as productive working from home. Aline, thank you. I will be talking a lot about that specific point in chapter 5 and again in next chapter, in the leadership chapter, to help you identify the brain preferences of people you work with and what to expect in terms of productivity and performance from people who are working from home now as opposed to working within a team context. Noemi is saying, Noemi from Qatar, we are not yet there, but we feel that eventually we will feel that. And as definitely Noemi, we couldn't agree more. And as Sarah said, the impact of trauma can show later and not necessarily right now. Luay, pharma industry in Lebanon is suffering. Majority of the persons involved have fearing about tomorrow and the cumulative losses. And this, I could share actually some interesting statistics with you. Fallout right now. This survey finished last Tuesday. Hospitality and travel affected by 89% losses, or 89% of hospitality and travel have been affected by the crisis. 87% of the education sector and 80% of media and entertainment. So we're talking big numbers. Most of the big market crash expected out of this crisis. Micromanaging the team. Interesting observation. This actually is something I've heard many times this week from different leaders, clients I work with. The fear of losing control because we can't see them face to face is actually leading some of the leaders to have a more micromanagement approach with their teams. A feeling that what you try to build your whole life is going to fall down in days. Mirella Yasbik, absolutely. Can you see we're repeating guilt, we're repeating fear, we're repeating all these negative feelings that we're actually very legitimately feeling at the moment. And the reason why I'm running this exercise with you, I want you to feel that if we are feeling these negative feelings, imagine what the people we are working with, our colleagues and our team members, are feeling at the moment. Because on top of all of this, and while we're feeling these, we also have the responsibility as leaders, business owners, business executives, to actually address those feelings in the people we work with. Any more comments? A lot of interesting comments. Andy, micromanaging. Mirella, a feeling of losing everything. Rabia is saying being lost between resizing. So the big restructuring question right now, what do we do with people? We've invested in them. We've invested in their learning. They in their skill set, and now we have to let them go. Big challenge at the moment. Muhammad is saying start sending many employees for unpaid leaves. A lot of companies have done that already. A lot of in the UK, people are being put on the furlough scheme where the government is supporting, but at the same time, they're waiting and they might end up without the job. Levon, again, few remarks. Lack of trust between management, of course, financial chaos. This crisis brings out the best and the worst in people. And can you imagine having a crisis bigger than this? It's affecting the whole world. It's big decisions to be made, big sacrifices, big trade-offs. A lot of lack of trust might happen right now, but on the positive side, leadership can play a very important role, the most important role at the moment, to bridge these gaps and fix these negativities that might arise through crisis. This is the importance of, and I'm really sorry for sounding negative, but in the first two chapters, I deliberately want us to talk about what is going wrong and the negative things that are happening so we can appreciate the advices and the leadership role that we will be talking about starting next chapter. We don't want to seem very criticizing of the situation and only negative, but it's a reality. We need to start by acknowledging that we are in trouble, the world is in trouble, we are personally in trouble. How can we address the challenge of leading other people while we're feeling all of these negative feelings? Any other comments before we move on? Clients suffer from our behaviors. Again, this is a really nice comment, Andy, because this is the time for the best ever customer service. But how can you provide that while you are suffering as an organization? Really difficult challenges at the moment. Jacques Saba from Qatar is saying management cannot guarantee the continuity of employment. I can understand how difficult this is for you if you happen to be in that situation where people are looking to you for reassurance. And your inability to provide any long-term reassurance right now, that the trust in you and the image that you've built of yourself as a leader all this time is somehow shaken. There are some recommendations, there are some tips, and I will be sharing best practices, and we'll be talking to people who I've noticed have been doing good job since the start of the crisis. Starting next week, we'll have a CEO of an organization, and you are going to participate in a management team, actually, of a company that is doing very well, providing an atmosphere of trust. Naif is saying IBM study for remote working showed that whatever the case, it's not as effective as attending the workplace. That's another very good point, Saleh. We will be talking from a scientific perspective about the difference in brain structure and how some people actually, their productivity is affected by being in a group, and some productivity is affected by working alone. How can you as a leader identify who prefers to work in a group setting? But definitely, I can confirm that science also confirms that we are a social being. We have a very developed social brain, and we are made to work in teams, to live in groups, and we perform better when we are around other people. As a business owner, Kuncheria George is saying, as a business owner, another problem is among partners. Definitely. Big decisions have to be made right now. Difficult decisions, and partners sometimes do not agree on the way forward. It's really difficult to make those decisions in times of uncertainty, when you can't really tell what's going to happen in the future. And we all realize that we're living week by week right now. We're waiting for government instructions on what's going to happen with the business. As I said last time, maybe it's not the time to think long term a lot, or maybe the strategy is a mix of long term and short term at the moment. Just a question, a big question mark for you to think about. Yara is saying inability to make any decision due to unpredictable scenarios. Absolutely, this is confirming. Let me put, thank you for your comments, really interesting comments. Thank you for sharing. Let me put those back in the framework of the business post-traumatic syndrome. We all are confirming that our businesses are going through trauma, our leadership is going through trauma. But on the positive side, can we now try to wear the hat of a leader leading a team, and you're observing people through the screen and through the phone line, and you've observed that they have different ways of coping with what is happening. However, can you also share with us in the chat window, how have you observed, what have you observed in terms of coping characteristics that people are showing since the crisis, in terms of, for instance, let's take two very important ones that are very common at the moment. Who in your team is showing more resilience, and who in your teams are showing more signs of withdrawal? Please share in the screen, in the chat window, if you are observing these two dynamics. Any comments there? Are you surprised with some people that are showing more confidence, more resilience right now? And are you also equally surprised with some of your team members or some of your leaders who are showing signs of withdrawal? It's a question for you to think of. What can be done right now? Just a quick, I've read something in the Guardian magazine yesterday. It was really interesting to see those numbers. I want to share with you a survey that's released last Tuesday also found that 82% of business leaders are expecting a decline in their revenue over the next 6 months. 82% of business leaders are actually have a certain certainty that they are not going to be doing well over the next 6 months. Some others do not see us getting out of this crisis in less than a year's time. So imagine the stress that we're put in while we have to reassure, positively lead other people. Some recommendations. Feel free to share what works with you. Maybe there's something for us to learn. What have you tried with your teams that is actually working? Help the team have better, more positive feelings, better reassurance. Some of the treatment recommendations that I recommend. What is in your psychological first aid kit? What science says is that weak emotional support usually increases the risk of post-traumatic stress disorder. So if we're all going through this trauma together, the way we handle and the way we support people during and after this trauma is going to actually be decisive in how much signs of stress disorder people are going to show later. So this is recommendation 1. How much psychological support do I have in my first aid kit? I called it the psychological first aid kit. Supporting feelings, supporting emotions, supporting people's relapses, people's stress and anxiety. Also, another scientific fact. Following a traumatic event, it is possible to overcome the stress disorder by regaining emotional control faster, restoring interpersonal communication and group identity, and regaining the sense of empowerment through participation at work. A big lesson for leadership. Make people participate. They don't trust the future right now. It is up to us when we're back to work to rebuild that trust by involving them even more than before. A question to you, how do you think leaders can play a role in making this happening? Better interpersonal communication, reintegrating people to a group identity, and empowering people. How do you think, from your own position, you can help this happen? McKinsey study shows, just a recent one, and it was done during the Corona phase. Advice for leaders includes communicating more regularly with employees. 68% said communication is now #1 factor in avoiding stress disorder. 67% said adopting a new health and safety procedures. 64% said canceling major events, and 53% halting business travel. But as you can see, the #1 factor that 68% of these respondents confirmed is communicating with employees regularly. How's the level of communication with your employees at the moment? What are you planning for when you're back together, return to the office? So, again, prepare your psychological first aid kit. Provide psychological safety. Recognize, we need to admit and help others admit that business is not doing well. And businesses don't always do well. If you remember the recommendations from last time, the #1 recommendation was don't break a promise at this stage. Better say things are bad than give false hopes. 3, start real conversations, heart-to-heart conversations. People don't want to hear things right now. They want to hear the truth. The truth that you have, which doesn't have to be the truth right now because nobody knows what's hidden for us in the future. Just make them feel that you are true. 4, focus on facts, not on hopes. Focus on what do we have between our hands and how can we deal with it. Use your staff as allies. 5, make both long-term and short-term plans. Mix the strategy right now. A lot of contingency should happen, a lot of scenario planning. And last, create a new social purpose for your business. Your business, we got a bit greedy in this world, just running after the money, using people sometimes as means to get the profit. We now realize that the workers that are paid the least sometimes in some countries are the ones that are considered essential workers at the moment. They're the ones who are facing the danger. Everybody is important. Everybody in your organization is important, and it's now time for us to value these relationships. to provide a social purpose for your business, not only a profit purpose. These are the some of the recommendations. Let's hear it from you. What do you recommend? Aline, observing some basic things like frequency of emails, calls, and overall interest in usual tasks. Rami saying we're experiencing more withdrawals. Aline is saying some team members are showing resilience and some more withdrawal. Jacques, it would be interesting to hear from some whose company is benefiting from this crisis. A lot of good point, Jack. A lot of companies are actually benefiting from this crisis. They're managing the team dynamics very well. I'm going to do my best to share a live experience with an organization next week that is actually doing very well. Rabia is saying, I have noticed that one of our senior financial controllers, she was very pushy and charismatic and became very introverted and not focused. Interesting observation, Rabia. People had a certain power and they might be losing some of that power. People now appreciate different things, different aspects of the business. Misha Musa is saying if the company is sending signals of instability of the business, employees are expected to show withdrawal signs. Definitely. With uncertainty comes protective factors, comes survival. Treatment recommendations, treatment comments. Thank you for adding to the treatment recommendations. I can see there's a lot of them. Rabia is saying we created a group development project that are achievable. The groups were merging many departments. Interesting. So can you confirm, Rabia, what you've done is you merged you created more synergy and you merged more projects together so the whole team can work together. If that's the case, this is a really interesting thing to do, just to confirm how important it is to keep seeing ourselves as a total unit. Noemi is saying, I encourage my staff to use the quarantine time positively by being an example myself. I've enrolled in different professional development trainings and share with them. This is really nice to hear, Noemi, hence your participation in this, for example. And I strongly encourage this. Rabia is saying the success of these projects gave us self-satisfaction, productivity, and motivation. Thank you. This is the time more than ever to redesign the team dynamics, to rethink how the team works together and realize how important it is to be with other people and work with other people. All this bickering and all these small conflicts that we had with people who sit right next door to us, we miss those sometimes right now. We miss this face-to-face, this human contact. And it looks like people are starting to appreciate the other members of the team more than ever before. Guy is saying a leader must be really smart at those times and use a mix of all, involving employees more, daily communication, and be much close to them. Absolutely. This is beautiful. Thank you very much for these comments. This is really interesting. Keep sharing your thoughts on this even after this is done. I think the chat window will remain open, and I'll try my best to share some of those in the next episode. Interesting. Let me just recap everything we spoke about since the beginning. So Sarah started by defining what trauma is and what is the traumatic disorder, and confirmed to us that the world is going and the business place is going through traumatic experience that will show its impact differently in different people, but will definitely have some negative impact on teamwork. This puts leaders in a situation to manage feelings, to manage these anxieties, to manage these withdrawals, and build more participative leadership style where we can integrate and involve people more than before. Remember to not make false promises at the moment. Remember to be true, to be honest with people, and make people acknowledge and realize that business is not necessarily doing well, and that we are in a situation that we need to manage together, and get them on board with the decisions you make. Just checking, there's nothing I've left. That's basically the message. So again, the message from chapter 1 was deal with feelings in parallel with tasks. The message from chapter 2 is expect anxiety to be longer than the crisis and after the crisis, but at the same time start preparing your psychological first aid kit. Help people realize the reality, but at the same time prepare yourself to be the leader that is going to provide the trust, to bring back the trust, provide the security by being honest, by sharing, by creating mix of long-term and short-term vision. This would be most of it. Next week, we'll be talking about the skills that we can build today to secure the future. What have we learned from this crisis? What went wrong? What skills have emerged? And how do you manage your own leadership persona? So more in-depth discussion on the leadership required at this stage and for the post-corona phase. Remember, please subscribe to the channel and sign up on webinars.leadership.com. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. It's Dr. Antoine Eid on LinkedIn. I've had a lot of people connecting this week. It makes it easier for us to communicate and arrange for an event and send you invitations through LinkedIn to next chapter. Q&A. Any questions before we wrap up? Any final questions? Again, I apologize if any IT issues happened this week. We're learning from time to time. Your participation is encouraging us to make things better, and I hope we can take this to become a platform that can help all of us prepare for what's coming next. Question from Yara, any emphasis on emotional intelligence skills to be discussed later on? Definitely. Yara, tune in next Wednesday. We're going to be talking about emotional intelligence as part of the leadership skills to be acknowledged and developed. It will be on the menu for chapter 3. Yes. All right. It seems this is the last question. Thank you very much. Have a nice week. Stay safe and see you soon.